Welcome to September 3rd regular City Council meeting. Welcome, everyone. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Maloney?
Here.
Councilmember Schmischer?
Here.
Councilmember Stein?
Here.
Councilmember Tracy?
Here.
Councilmember Worthington?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Here.
Mayor Troutman?
Here. Could I ask Nelson Hoover to step forward with our invocation? Would you please rise?
Good evening. Would you take a moment to bow your head with me? Father, I thank you for these men and women that have been willing to serve their community in this way. I ask your blessing on them tonight. I ask for heavenly wisdom for them, for that they, the decisions they make as they look at the agenda items would be made for the good of the community. I pray that there be nothing self-serving in this, but it would bring you glory, and Canyon City would begin to continue to honor you. Bless and keep them. I ask your blessing on their families and those that are close to them in their absence, the things that they're sacrificing to be here to serve tonight. Jesus, we thank you for them. In your name we pray, amen.
Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all. And I have one citizen that would like to speak to council. If you want to speak, you fill out two. Do I have two here? Do you want me to put my glasses on to see all these? Okay, the first one is John Laudenschlager. Would you step forward and what's your name again, and make sure your mic is on and pull it down close to you?
I have a handout. Could I pass it out right now?
Why don't you give it to Cindy?
Okay.
Sure. John, go ahead.
Sometime in the last year, I think twice, I was making a right-hand turn at intersections in town and rode my right rear tire up over the curb. It's dumb, but I'm not the only one. All our curbs here are heavily scuffed, so lots of vehicles do the same thing. And I kind of wondered, gee, you know, I might have dented the rim of my tire, rim of the wheel. I might have hurt the sidewall of the tire. I might have burped some air out of the tire. Well, nothing happened, but it could have, and it probably will for some people sometimes. I wondered, why do we have vertical curbs right at the apex of a corner? Not all corners at intersections in town are like that. Until very recently, all four corners around the county building had just a single ramp that went from sidewalk level to street level in the center, right at the apex of the corner, nowhere else. Now those are being replaced right now. In fact, 2 or 3 of them are already replaced by modern new style, which involve a vertical curb right at the apex and 2 pedestrian-friendly, baby carriage-friendly ramps down to street level for crossing the street. Recently, I visited a brother in Encinitas, California, which is a rich seaside town, and walking around town, I noticed, gee, all the corners I'm seeing here are simple ramps right at the apex of the corner, nowhere else. And in the handout I gave you, the picture I took is where old sidewalk joins what is a new corner. There are lots of these new corners in Encinitas. Apparently, this town thinks it's a good idea. And I think it's a good idea too. So I thought I'd mention it.
Okay. I think that there might be a safety factor involved, at least that's perceived, the safety factor, so that the wheel doesn't come up and possibly hit a pedestrian. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but would you want to comment on that, Ryan or Leo?
I guess I'd ask Leo to come up if he has any comments in particular.
And then we'll go to John Hamrick as soon as we can cut Leo short. No, he's not short.
Okay.
Yeah, I can say we do have quite a few tight corners in town. They are designed to make a turn successfully, but it requires very low speed to make a turn around a lot of those corners, which is what we try to do to encourage pedestrian safety and vehicular safety. We try to really slow the speed down at those corners. The work, in particular at the county building, was done to make those new sidewalks ADA compliant all the way around the building. So those are built up to the new ADA standards. A lot of times where you have the ramp that just comes down at the apex of the curve, as mentioned, those don't meet the standards. A lot of times they're very hard to get the slopes to work. So we prefer to do the separated crosswalks that have a little bit of curb between them. So.
Okay. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to point out to you, sir, that we do have a multimodal master plan under development. It is on our city website, and that would be a really great thing to review. Sidewalks are a large focus of that plan, and the plan is our vision for the future. And so this is something that if you'd like to make a comment on, we'd sure like to hear you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Is John Themig? Yeah. Would you step forward, please? And oh, it did? Yeah. Well, thank you. You want to discuss the noise ordinance?
Yeah, so I am the area operations manager for the Wholesome Quarry here at the end of town. And I had read that I understand that there's a noise ordinance prohibiting Jake breaks in downtown, 1st Street to 15th Street, and that the quarry, there was also some discussion about prohibiting Jake breaks on the ramp coming down from the quarry. And I would just, I guess ask or remind everybody that those Jake brakes are a safety device. They are used to help slow down the truck. They are to help assist the service brakes. The service brakes can overheat coming down a hill such as that. We recently had, so up in the town of Morrison, we also have a quarry where the town has successfully banned the use of Jake brakes, so trucks have to use their service brakes coming down quite a long road, about the same as what we have at the quarry here in Canyon City. We recently had a truck whose brakes failed about halfway down that, and that truck ran through a fairly busy state highway. Fortunately, there were no cars on the road. The truck did end up in across the street in the neighbor's field, but just shows it points out the need for these Jake brakes. We want to be good neighbors. Understand that Jake brakes do make some noise. So we have multiple signs up at the quarry that say no Jake brakes before 7 a.m., no Jake brakes after 8 a.m. We also have signs that say that Jake brake mufflers are required. And the one thing I think that we can probably do better to be a better neighbors is to enforce with our haulers. So those trucks that haul from us primarily are not Wholesome employees. They're third-party vendors. But we feel we can probably do a bit better job of making sure that our third-party haulers have Jake brake mufflers installed, and we're gonna be working to make that a bit better. So.
Good. Thank you. Amy?
Thank you. I do have a number of questions. Will you be around for the entire meeting, Mr. Timmick? I know
Sure.
that we're talking about the noise ordinance at the end. I'm otherwise happy to ask them now.
I can stick around till the end. It's fine.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Yep.
much. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Emily?
That was my question too. I just wanted to know if you could be here when we get to that item on the agenda, because we'll have more discussion then about that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay. Are there any city council announcements?
Oh,
This is going to be your last chance. I'm not doing it again. Oh, okay. Sorry. John, go ahead.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Today is the first city council meeting in September, and so that means Wednesday is KRLN. And so I'm looking, that's tomorrow. That is tomorrow. If we have anybody that would like to go in and say some good words about us, that would be great.
I think
It
I was
got really
there.
quiet.
I think I was there last month, so it'd be great for someone else to do it.
Anyone else?
John, I can come keep you company. Here, but I will follow your lead. What time? It's, the interview starts at 8:30, so it's good to be there at about 1:15.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Emily?
Oh, I have an item, I think I may have sent an email about this, but the Florence Reporter the newspaper is hosting a candidate roundtable Thursday evening, 6 p.m. at the Rialto Theater in Florence, and this is for the single candidate running for district attorney for the 11th Judicial District. So that candidate will also be accompanied by some folks from law enforcement from the 4 different counties in the Judicial District. So anyone, there's a sign up to attend. They're asking for people to reserve a spot so they don't run out of spots, but I wanted to mention that. It's a good opportunity to hear from the person running for DA.
Thank you, Emily. I have signed up for that, and if more than one council person goes, do we have to announce that, Cindy, or is it? Have you signed up? Okay, I have too, so I'm one of the spots. Is that right? Spots? Gosh, you guys are slow tonight. I don't know. We do have on Wednesday then at 5 o'clock, we have the urban renewal meeting prior to our general government. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right here in this building. So URL, or URA, the authority, is at 5 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock we have the other portion of the budgeting that seems to be going on forever. No, just kidding. Okay, enough of the jokes. Anybody else? Any announcements? Good. Okay, on a serious note, I'm going to make we have a proclamation designating September 24th as Suicide Prevention Month. Like I said, very serious note. I would like to read this, and it goes as follows. National Suicide Prevention Month is September 2024. Whereas Canyon City is home to more than 17,000 people, a place of destination for thousands of visitors annually, and the site of about a dozen state and federal correctional facilities nearby. And whereas the Fremont County coroner reported 25 suicides were investigated in 2023, one of which was an offender in the state or federal prison. And whereas 90% of those who died by suicide had a diagnosable mental health condition at the time of their death, according to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and whereas in 2021, suicide was Colorado's 8th leading cause of death and the 2nd leading cause of death for ages 10 through 44. And whereas on average, there are 132 suicides per day in the United States. And whereas 54% of Americans have been affected by suicide in some way, now, therefore, let it be proclaimed by Canyon City Mayor Preston Troutman, me, that September 24th is hereby designated as National Suicide Prevention Month in Canyon City. Mayor Troutman and Canyon City Council do urge all people of Canyon City to become educated on suicide prevention and awareness and support those affected by suicide during this month and throughout the year. And that's dated today. So please keep that in mind. That does affect a lot of people. And as you know, we're all available if anybody would like to come talk or call, please do so. Okay, so going on to the consent agenda, I'd have the city administrator review the consent agenda and its contents, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Item 8A is to approve the minutes for the regular city council meeting on August 19th, the Vision Committee meeting on August 21st, and the special meetings on August 19th, which was the pool joint session, August 22nd, which was the community relations meeting at the prison. 8B authorizes the mayor to sign Colorado Department of Transportation easement for the Oil Creek Ditch Crossing MOA. 8C authorizes the city administrator to sign a professional services agreement with Core Distinction for a hotel market and feasibility study. 8D authorizes advanced material purchase for 8th and Pine Ditch Crossing. 8E authorizes vehicles to be declared surplus and disposed of according to the city purchasing policy. 8F is approved community agency funding application for Wish for Wheels in the amount of $2,400. 8G awards bid 53-24 LED tennis court lighting conversion project to Territory Electric of Canyon City, Colorado in an amount not to exceed $31,028. 8H awards bid 56-24 Dell servers to Xbyte Technologies in an amount not to exceed $49,757. 8I awards bid 57-24 networking security hardware to PC Solutions and Integration, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $45,485.35. 8J awards bid 59-24 software purchase for PLC/SCADA upgrade to Rexel in an amount not to exceed $9,791.17. 8K and 8L are to receive and file cash disbursements.
Are there any additions or corrections on that? Andrea?
I just had a couple of questions about the, us funding the marketing study for Cobblestone Marriott. I'm kind of confused by that. Can we discuss it now, or should we put it somewhere else on the agenda?
That's up to council, how you'd like to handle that.
How does everybody feel about it?
Pardon?
You want, is that up to council? Do you want to have that discussion right now, or before we approve this consent agenda? Ryan, would you like to take that and discuss that?
Actually, I'll ask Rick, our Economic Development Manager, to come up and talk about that. You know, that for these hotel studies, or to try and attract hotels, we tend to see that there's a little bit more emphasis put on the communities to do the feasibility study to show that there's a need for it. And I'll let Rick get into the details of that.
Yeah, that's largely the reason for it. We've been approached a number of times by Cobblestone, and then we have also heard that Marriott has an interest in Canyon City as well. When I went to Vegas for ICSC this year, I met with Marriott. They're the kind of company that won't even look at the community unless the community has a feasibility study. So we didn't think about doing one. I thought, well, if you're not interested in our community, we're not going to do one. Cobblestone came to us with investors who are seriously interested in the community, and they're tied to the community. It's very common for businesses all over the place to ask for money. And in this case, Cobblestone has offered to, if the study indicates that there's demand for it and they develop, they will reimburse it. But communities in general are being asked to do it partially because it makes it appear, when a developer does it, it makes it appear tainted if they want to be in that community, and maybe the community doesn't have a need for it. So it gives a little bit of credibility to the report when a community does it. I actually emailed the company that we're recommending awarding this to. 80% of their studies go to communities instead of industry. So it's pretty common right now. But since we have an investor who's interested, or investors who are very interested, and we had 2 hotels that were interested, we thought it's probably time to take a look at it.
The nice thing about this contract and this particular vendor is they charge 50% for upfront to see if there is a need. And if there is a need, they don't charge the other 50% until the community can show that there's a need and they finish that part of the study. And I don't know, Rick, if you want to say any more about that.
Yeah, it's basically we will be paying 50% upfront, but if our community doesn't need hotels, we don't pay the rest of it. And if we let it sit for a year and we decide we want to look at it again next year, then we pay the rest of it then.
Well, I was just a little confused because I'm no expert at this, of course, but the Cobblestone Ventures, they're franchises, and they're average 31-room hotels. They're a small footprint, and are they going to look, if we pay for this study, are they going to look at the big picture of what we already have and the numbers of who are coming into town? Because
Yes.
it seems to me, and then I don't understand the business, but it seems to me if I were a franchisee, I'd do that research before I even came to you.
Well, they have a really good hunch. They have a really about our community. And they are looking at probably more like 50 to 70 units and a little more on the higher end. They specialize in rural communities. Mm-hmm. They love rural communities. That's really all they do. So they have a hunch.
And this would
already.
be inside the city.
Mm-hmm. Inside
There
the
would
city.
be a footprint big enough inside
and
the city.
The study would look at more than just one site. It would look
Mm-hmm.
at 3, potentially 4 sites in the community to determine where the best location is for a hotel right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cobblestone in particular is interested in the riverfront, like other communities, like other
Mm-hmm.
investors are. But when they came across the investors and they saw the development out at 4 Mile, basically Love's Travel Plaza,
Mm-hmm.
they reached out again and said, we are very interested in looking out there at sites. So we met them out there, and Rob Brown and I met them out there. But the study itself will look at multiple locations. It'll take into consideration every hotel we have and the Hotel St. Cloud. And we'll take a look at different sites and come up with a general idea whether we as a community have demand for more hotel rooms. So it's a much bigger picture than you would suspect from one vendor, I guess you could say. So that's part of the reason too that communities take this on, just to make sure that they have a strong understanding of what they need, if they need it, and where it makes sense to do it.
So this study, will that look at different available footprints throughout the city?
Yes, it'll do a full feasibility study of recommended sizes of facilities, how many rooms. And it will take a look at feasibility in terms of specific vendors, not just Cobblestone, but a few others as well, to determine the level of hotel that would work or wouldn't work. So yeah, it's pretty impressive how thorough they are and how revealing, I guess you could say, they are.
Thank you, Rick.
Sure.
Thank you. Amy? Did I
Thank
catch you in mid-bite?
You did.
Okay.
I have questions on 2 other agenda items, so I don't know if anyone else had questions about that.
Emily,
agenda
was
study.
yours regarding that?
Actually, my questions have been answered. I'm good.
Okay, Emily. So everybody, can we move on from that? Okay, looks good. Yes, Amy. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. I had a question about 8B and 8F. With regard to the Oil Creek ditch diversion, I know there's been a concern about an upriver diversion, I believe to the point that the crossing agreement is about, that causes concern for boaters who have to portage. Was that raised during this conversation with Oil Creek, or has that been part of the conversation at all? Thanks.
Leo, I think that one's going to be you.
Leo, you could have a front row seat, you know. Go ahead.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with the discussion that you mentioned. This is for just the 2 culvert crossings of Highway 50. This is a CDOT project that they're going to repair the 2 culverts that take the Oil Creek ditch under Highway 50, but they need a little bit more room outside of the highway right-of-way to be able to work. So that They are requesting permission from the city because one side would be just into what is part of Veterans Park, and the other side would be into the old Constantino's, is that the restaurant name, property, here on this side of City Hall. So,
Thank you. Understood. I'd love to talk more with you offline to make sure that that issue is on your radar screen for future conversations with Oil Creek.
absolutely.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Leo. And then my other, unless anyone else had anything on 8B. My other question was on 8F with regard to Wish for Wheels and community agency funding. I don't know if this would be most appropriately addressed to you, Administrator Stevens, or to Economic Development Director Harmon, or to the Wish for Wheels founder, who happens to be in the audience. My
I'm happy to start.
Awesome. First off, obviously, bikes for needy kids in our community is obviously a very worthwhile endeavor, and I'm really excited about this possibility. I did want to flag that community agency funding, as far as I'm aware, and Administrator Stevens, please correct me if I'm wrong in this, it's reimbursable and receipts are required to be submitted for the expenses. And we do not typically, through community agency funding, fund salaries or kind of overhead expenses for any of our local 501c3s who apply for it. I do understand that this request does include some of those salaries and admin expenses that are kind of baked into the cost for the bikes. So I'm just curious as to how the city envisions this community agency funding reimbursement request working. Thank you.
Silence.
Yeah, I think the way we're looking at it is it's $200 per kiddo as a fee. I think Rick had responded to an email earlier about some of those costs for administrative purposes, but I don't know that every nonprofit doesn't have some costs baked in to their overall programming.
Yes, but they submit receipts, and that's how the city reimburses, and those receipts are not for salaries or overhead expenses. So I think I would not be comfortable moving this forward without actually understanding how we would be holding this organization to the same standards that we hold all of our local nonprofits to under the eligibility expenses for community agency funding. Says nothing about, obviously, the desire to give bikes to kids in our community who need them. But I do just want to make sure that we're kind of following the same standards that we do for this particular pot of funding.
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned at the last meeting, this is a little bit different than a traditional community agency funding request. It'd be up to council whether or not you want to forego some of those rules to fund this request, or potentially even pulling the money out of the request completely and funding it as another project or through a city council project. There is money in the city council budget for city council projects as well.
Would you like more of an explanation of costs from Brad?
Sure. I'd also love to understand kind of how saturation has worked in other communities. Obviously, second graders outgrow bikes at a pretty quick clip. How maintenance works. Do other communities see kind of the Goodwills flooded with bikes after the first year? If we're only able to hit a proportion of our second graders, how do we ensure that it's those who really need the bikes? I know we're able to provide some bikes through Shop with a Cop towards the end of the year, and that's been a really great program, but that there's never enough funding to provide every kiddo there with a bike. So we'd love to just kind of better understand, especially if we're being asked to waive the requirements that we have in place for the other local 501c3s. Thanks.
Yeah, a little. I'll introduce Brad in a second, but a little more background behind the idea for the community build. Brad came to me last fall with the idea of wanting to do bike builds in the community, and typically they're corporate team building or client relations events. And I didn't necessarily feel like we had corporations who would want to pony up $20,000, $30,000 to build bikes. But we do, as a city, have a little bit of a reputation problem with businesses. And I thought, what a great way to bring the city together with fire district, local businesses, other organizations to do a community build for bikes, or excuse me, for second graders. That's kind of the reasoning behind the creation of it like this. I did think about using funding from my downtown promotions budget line to do a build downtown so we could make it a downtown community event. And we're still looking at downtown. My budget is starting to run dry in that line item, so not sure that we have the funding to do it there. And then Ryan recommended we use the community agent funding. But Brad Appel is the chairman and founder of the organization. I will let him come up and explain a little bit more, and he can answer your questions directly.
Can I just sidebar with Rick for 1 second?
Attorney stuff.
Are there any other items on the agenda that we would like to discussion, or is that just it? Apparently not. Okay. When they're citing their sidebar, they'll come forward.
All right.
Yes.
Hey, everybody, thanks. I'm Brad Appel with Wish for Wheels. I heard a lot of questions, so if we could just backtrack a little bit so I get them right, because I think there were a lot of questions. So administration I heard about, and then saturation, right, as well? What else did I miss? So there was a saturation question about what happens when we deliver a lot of bikes.
There's a kids growth question, there's a maintenance question, there's an ownership question.
Yep.
There's a what happens year after year question. And there's a question of how does that $200 per kiddo actually break down?
Great.
How much of that is going towards project costs? How much of that is going towards salary and admin and travel and other overhead expenses? How would you actually submit receipts for those things? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll backtrack that way. So about $50 per bike goes towards admin costs. We are a team of 7. We have 5 different types of insurance. We have a warehouse. Last year we served 9,300 kids in 19 states. So we have expenses as a team, IT expenses. We own 4 trucks, things like that. We're a 501c3 based out of Denver. We're national in footprint, and we give brand new bikes and helmets to second graders in Title I schools. Title I being 40% or more free reduced lunches, mandated by the federal government, which is the minimum standard, and then every district adjusts that as we go. We've been talking with Canyon City, and there's 250 kids, 225 kids in Title I schools, another 25 kids in the charter school. So our idea was, could we get to all 250 kids? We have some great sponsors so far. Our typical model at Wish for Wheels, we don't really do donors or grants because we work with companies who fund our bikes. You come out and build them through a team build, client event, build with the kids, and then the company comes and meets all those second graders, and they come from amazing companies. In Canyon, as Rick was mentioning, we wanted to really build a community build, and we do have some great companies who are funding bikes. We have Pharisee Ford, we have Coming Home Realty, we have we have Whitewater Rooftop Social, we have Canyon Signature Mortgage, World's End Brewing, and Walmart as well. So we have some companies, and our goal was originally to do all 250 kids if we could get the funding. We're currently on our way towards, and after talking with the school district, there are 2 schools that the school district has recommended, which is Harrison and I want to say Washington, but I want to...
Washington.
Yep, and I want to be sure on my notes, just as I say it. So Washington Elementary and Harrison Elementary are the 2 schools that were recommended to Wish for Wheels from the district. There's other schools. Obviously, the Exploratory School has 40 kids, McKinley has 25 kids, Lincoln has 40 kids, and the charter school has 25 kids. These are rough estimates based on enrollment. So I'm new in Canyon. My wife and I moved here last Halloween, and I work at Wish for Wheels nationally, and I love this program, and it really elevates kids. It brings well-being to kids, families, and communities. The bike is a grow in size. It lasts 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade. My joke is if it's my size, 5th grade. So sometimes that joke does well. Thank you. Thanks for the peanut gallery. So the idea is to get kids mobile and get them away from this and get them community oriented. So every kid gets the exact same bike and helmet. And in terms of maintenance, we run a program out of Denver called Community Repair, and we engage with police departments, fire departments, youth centers, elementary schools, and we have champions at all these places, and we open a bicycle repair clinic in those places. So our idea was to either work with the police department and work with the Colorado High School Mountain Bike League and have a maintenance program where these kids can get their tires filled up or their bike brakes checked or something like that. This is a very simple 20-inch single-speed bike, so the biggest deterrent is a flat tire. And an 8-year-old thinks that a flat tire means they just need a new bike. We want to educate them this other way. So we're talking to the Colorado High School Mountain Bike League about possibly doing volunteer work and getting these bikes up and running. Or every elementary school has a maintenance kit, if you will. They have a pump out front, so at least the kids can get air in their tires and things like that. Okay. I rambled for a little bit. What did I not answer?
Amy, would you?
Saturation?
Saturation. This is our first time kind of being in a small town like this. We have served other towns. We've done this in Montrose. We've done this in other small towns across the country, but we haven't really done it multiple years. So I don't know the answer to that, and we're open to adjusting our program to help with saturation. We know that saturation's a tough thing, and especially in a town that has 250 kids. If we do get to hopefully one year we'll get to the place where all 250 kids get bikes every year, then I think we'll really look at what does that look like for the community. But for this first year, to serve 114 kids with a bike that'll last 3 years, I'm not sure that there's oversaturation that'll happen, and people share the bikes throughout the years. In Denver alone, there's 5,500 second graders every year, and every year I give away a bike, and another Wish for Wheels bike will show up, and I know exactly what year it's from. And I'll say to the kid, hey, where'd you get that bike? I know that's from like 2007. And he's like, I got it from my friend who got it from his brother. I got it from this person. So they do make their rounds, and they last a long time. So it is something that then gets dispersed elsewhere. So with hopes that as we're seeding the community with more bikes, you know, Florence, Penrose, other areas, maybe Pueblo and other Cotopaxi, other communities might pick up these bikes as well. So I don't necessarily, I don't know if I answered your question because I don't know, I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, I guess I've just seen kids grow from second to third grade and already outgrow their bikes, so to have one bike last for 3 seasons seems interesting to me, and I'm excited to learn more about your organization and how that works for you.
Okay.
So thank you, but I don't have any further questions for you.
Okay, thank you, Amy. John?
So I just wanted to say that the one of the ways that we deal with funding is it's reimbursable. It's the hard cost, and so if you have receipts for bikes and helmets, would be fully coverable by this amount by this grant. What would not be is salaries or something like that. But so if those are the conditions of the money that we give you, do you have any problem using it that way?
So it's my understanding that the $2,400 would just cover the cost of the bike and the helmet, but not cover gas or fuel or insurance or, I mean, my salary, I can forgo that, that's fine.
Utilities, things like that.
Utilities, so any of those costs are not covered.
Correct.
Okay. That is totally okay with me. I would be fine with that. Not only would I be okay with that, but that would also provide more bikes with the $2,400, right? Yep. So, and I do appreciate that because I want Wish for Wheels to be on a level playing field with all the other amazing organizations here. So, you know, we're new, we want to contribute in a positive way, and we really appreciate the generosity.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Is there anything else on the consent agenda that you would like to? So I take it we're going to leave the 2,400 on the consent agenda and not reassign it in any other way. Okay.
No, I do. The memo as written mentions, I think, $200 per bike, but I think as we have discussed, it wouldn't necessarily require an amendment because the amount would not be changed.
The amount would not be changed, and we would reimburse at $150 per bike, or hard costs, bike and helmet.
So at this point, there are no additions or corrections to the consent agenda. Is that correct? I would then entertain a motion on the consent agenda. Emily?
I move for approval of the agenda and the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Okay, at this point, it's the long awaited for the administrator's report. It's in every session. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you may have seen, if you drove on Main Street today, fencing went around the front of New Method Laundry. They are getting ready to start taking the facade off. The Historic Preservation Commission and Lisa Stutz, our museum director, have both been notified, so they know that this is happening, so they can document it as it comes down. This is one of the steps that they'll be working on while they're working on shoring up the inside, those interior walls that are part of the project. A couple of updates, also not in the administrator's report. I've been working with the PUC regarding the Black Hills rate case. The PUC will be coming down here on October 9th for our general government meeting to do an informational session. They'll be bringing the Office of Consumer Advocate with them to help answer questions. And then we have, they're working on scheduling the public hearing, which we will host in these chambers. They're scheduling several, but the Canyon City public hearing will be November 19th from 4 to 7 p.m. That's a Tuesday evening, I believe. And then we are also working with the state. I'll be meeting with the Attorney General's office this coming Thursday. Rick has met with the Attorney General's office already regarding the Kroger-Albertsons merger. They're giving us some updates and asking some additional questions. So continuing to see some movement from that standpoint as well. And happy to answer any questions regarding the written administrator's report. I know there were some questions regarding CRCA and the funding of their $45,000 that will be billed through CRCA to the city.
Okay, John?
Yes, Mr. Administrator, what dog do we have in the fight about the Kroger merger?
I think for us, from a community perspective, I think our biggest concern is not losing a grocery store.
Okay, and is this just informational, or are they perhaps thinking that there's some action the city can take?
They may be asking for people to testify in the case, and I think from an economic development standpoint, what Rick and I have talked about is we don't necessarily care whether or not there's a merger. What we care about is that we don't lose a grocery store.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Any other questions on the administrator? Amy?
Thanks. I'm curious as to how we have in the past approved increases for CRCA. I understand that we don't need to formally approve it as council, given that we have the intergovernmental agreement with them, but has this routinely just been presented in an administrator's report? Do we typically give some sort of authorization to Chief Schick as our CRCA representative?
No, not to. I mean, we give guidance to the CRCA representative from an administrative standpoint regarding budget increases. Every year we see those budget increases, and we give a lot of feedback. There was a lot of discussion last year in particular. But for this, it's subject to appropriations, and City Council gives formal approval through the adoption of the budget.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other questions of our administrator? None? Okay. Then let's move on to item number 10. It's a discussion, introduction and adoption by title only of Resolution 13, Series 2024, entitled, "A Resolution Authorizing Assignment to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority of a Private Activity Bond Allocation of the City of Canyon City pursuant to the Colorado Private Activity Bond Ceiling Allocation Act, and I would invite the administrator to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to ask Rick Harmon to come up and give a report on this.
Boy, that Rick's getting a lot of time, isn't he?
No need for a sidebar on this one.
Is that a sidebar? No, never mind.
No
never mind.
need for a sidebar.
Thank you.
This is something we did last year as well. Last year, the state of Colorado began to basically authorize private activity bonds to communities that had populations. They used to do it above 20,000. Now they dropped it to, I believe, 17,000, which brought Canyon City into the possibility of receiving private activity bonds. These are bonds that communities typically will use to help support low-income housing tax credit projects, 4% tax credit projects. The challenge with communities, however, is that issuing bonds is amazingly expensive, and an amount like this doesn't allow for really us to issue bonds without collecting for years and years. So communities will contact other communities who are receiving allocations of private activity bonds and request that those funds be transferred to them. I haven't had any requests this year for that, but last year we did have some requests. We decided last year to authorize, or excuse me, to transfer those bonds to CHAFA, since they are already serving single-family homeowners in our community, already serving our community. If we do not use them, we do not transfer to another community, we do not transfer to CHAFA, then they automatically go back into the state's private activity bond fund of basically unused private activity bonds. So it's our recommendation that we, and this was through conversations with council last year for the most part, that we transfer these private activity bonds, which is the forgot the amount offhand, to Colorado, $1,096,062 to Colorado Housing and Finance Authority for their use to support housing in our community and other 4% low-income housing tax credit projects. I should add that there was an application in for a 9% tax credit project. They applied for the tax credits last year that would have been funded this year. They were not funded, unfortunately. So the 9% project did not succeed, and I asked the developers if they would be particularly interested in pursuing a 4% project, hopefully with receiving private activity bonds either from CHAFA or the state, and they said no. They were not interested in continuing their development activities here. So it's our recommendation that we allocate these to Colorado Housing Finance Authority.
Discussion from council? Questions? Now, Cindy, on this it asks for a roll call. Don't we have to do a vote, a motion?
There's a resolution.
A motion on the resolution that we just discussed. Okay. That's what I thought. Emily?
If you're ready for a motion,
Yes, ma'am.
I will do that. I
Go
move
right
for
ahead.
approval of Resolution 13, Series of 2024, entitled Resolution Authorizing Assignment to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority of a Private Activity Bond Allocation of the City of Canyon City pursuant to the Colorado Private Activity Bond Ceiling Allocation Act.
Second? Second? Thank you, Kathy. Any discussion on that motion? Would you now please call the roll?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye. Okay, thank you all. So we're going on to B. It's a second reading and adoption by title only of Ordinance 5, Series 2024, entitled, An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Section 10.04.165 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning vehicle noise. We have a staff report.
Yes, sir. We have both Chief Schick and Leo Evans, our Public Works Director, here to help answer questions. This is a second reading. We have received questions, I think mostly through council members, about why the the section of road was chosen, so between First Street and Justice Center. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cold going on right now. The reason is it's the flattest grade. So, you know, as you're approaching the city coming from the west, you're coming down 8 Mile Hill. As you're approaching from the east, you're coming down from the Loves, and there's some significant grade there. We have seen a lot of accidents there at the McKinsey intersection, so it does make sense to you know, allow the use of Jake brakes or engine brakes at those locations. So that is the reasoning there. I know Chief Schick and Leo Evans can help answer those questions in more detail if there are more questions. At the last meeting, there was a request to have a map of the Wholesome sites on the dais. You do have a copy of that. I don't know how that in particular relates to the noise ordinance itself, but you'll see on the map we currently have the crossing agreement that allows the use of the paved road that goes by the water treatment facility. If we did not have that crossing agreement, the actual legal access for that road or for the mine operations would actually go down to Tunnel Drive, and all that truck traffic would be directly on Tunnel Drive, which I think is something we want to avoid. Happy to answer any other questions. Staff does recommend approval on second reading.
Inley.
Thanks. I believe at first reading we had also requested an update on the measures that were being taken to alleviate the noise concerns for the residents on Tunnel Drive. Do you have that for us?
Yeah, Chief, do you want to talk about measures for Tunnel Drive?
Sure.
I know from a signage standpoint, the mine has, as John mentioned earlier, the mine has some signage. We plan on putting some signage up on the road itself, on the city's portion of the road. But I will hand it over to Chief Schick for the rest of.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Mayor, members of council, in light of this ordinance, of course, we're going to do our due diligence to educate our community prior to any enforcement measures. We do think that the ordinance is reasonable and responsive to community concerns as they've been purported to us. I do want to point out that Wholesome, after first reading, was very responsive. Mr. Themig, that you heard from earlier this evening, reached out to me immediately thereafter, and we talked about the significance of concerns with regards to safety, using the compression brakes in the appropriate areas as he described earlier. And then he went on to offer comprehensive support through his company, as he talked about additional signage going in and out of the facility up there, and then working with us to make sure that those independent contractors, first assuring us that Wholesome's trucks meet all of those safety standards, meet and exceed all of those safety standards, and focusing on independent contractors to make sure that you know, they're carrying the same burden as his company, and those that are not in compliance, you know, they would suffer some restrictions from Wholesome. So I just want to point out that Wholesome's been very supportive and responsive of our pursuits here in this ordinance to respond to citizen concerns. So we are also talking with Colorado State Patrol, as indicated in first reading, and I have since got a hold of the sergeant in charge of commercial motor vehicle inspections. We have talked about the quarterly inspections, roadside inspections, to make sure all of those safety standards, to include muffler function, are in compliance with the model traffic code, and taking the appropriate action for those instances that those commercial motor vehicles aren't in compliance. And further, we are talking about, which of course will be completely dependent on our staffing levels, but when we get to a level that we can have dedicated traffic units again, training them in the first level inspection series that would allow us to do self inspections throughout the year as well. So we're trying to be as responsive and comprehensive as we can in this regard.
Do you have a sense from that, Sergeant, when those quarterly inspections might be able to begin?
I spoke with him as late as last week, towards the end of the week, and going right into the Labor Day weekend. So he's going to get back to me with actual schedule, but he assured me that we could probably host the first one in the fourth quarter of this year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Emily?
I'm sorry, one more thing. Leo Evans and I also met with CDOT regarding the site as well, particularly the stop sign there, and CDOT is also looking into anything that they might be able to provide from an assistance level as well.
Emily, go ahead.
Thanks. For a while, I think I was confused about just saying no compression brakes on a certain stretch of highway versus mufflers for engine brakes. And am I remembering correctly that the mufflers are required by state law? And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
it's not something that we need to add into this ordinance.
Absolutely
And so
required.
that's what the inspections will be about, is
Yes,
making
ma'am.
sure that the proper equipment is on the trucks when those inspections
You're
are done.
absolutely correct.
So
Yes,
then
ma'am.
this ordinance is to say, we're just going to say no to the use of these brakes on this particular stretch of highway.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it, thanks.
That is correct, and the city has also adopted the engine mufflers through the adoption of the model
traffic code.
Thanks, right, model traffic code. My other question is just to point out that there might need to be a slight modification in wording in Section 1425, the new section, item B, the fourth line of item B. It looks like it should say, has erected signage identifying this prohibition, or something to that effect. That's all.
Thank you. Amy?
Thanks. With regard to the muffling of the engine compression brakes, does it make sense to reference that prohibition in this ordinance as well?
I wouldn't think so. It's required by the model traffic code. It's in state law and in city ordinance already. So it's a standalone offense in that regard.
What's the fine for that?
I believe it's a penalty assessment, but I'm not sure. So I believe, I don't know. It may be $4.99, but I'm just not sure.
Okay. And then is that also something that I think I've seen other communities have signs around no unmuffled engine compression brakes allowed? Is that something that we could put kind of more at city limits on major roads?
I've not seen that sign. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I've not seen that particular signage, because it would be just indicating what state law already provides.
Yeah, I know Leo has been having some conversations with CDOT as well regarding signage. Do you want to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the sign that you're referencing, CDOT does have a standard sign that just reiterates the state law that they're willing to put up at city limits if we'd like to request that. Just trying to figure out how to make that work with the signing we have to put up for the ordinance, because it's not necessarily the same signing.
I guess I'm thinking more about perhaps this area on Tunnel Drive, perhaps some of the areas that we know folks do have this particular issue at, where we don't want to prohibit the use altogether, given the safety concerns with the grade. And given our puzzle piece city boundary shape, I realize that we wouldn't be able to post it on every single street that comes into the city, but certainly on those areas where we're seeing those concerns and hearing those reports, it seems like that would be a really helpful thing to have up just to deter the use.
The major truck routes, yeah. But yeah, yes, that would be the signage that we would be putting up on Tunnel Drive, would be the reference back to the state law.
I think we've also had some citizen complaints around County Road 123, around South 9th, so those other routes as well. I have a couple more questions, but I'm happy to pause in case others on council do as well.
How many more questions do you have?
I think I have 3.
Okay.
But they all are for,
Is this what we talk about muffled?
colleague.
No, go right ahead, ask your question. I'm just joking with you, of course.
Wow.
Don't give me the eye.
Wow. Some of the residents on Tunnel Drive had referenced the possibility of using an alternative route down. I don't know if that's something that you're familiar with or could maybe speak to us a little bit about.
Yeah, so I think this might be what, is this further north?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so.
So that is a road that we use for what we call our Fremont Quarry. That is limited to 48 trucks a day per our permit, our access permit with the state of Colorado or CDOT. So furthermore, that road is not really built for couple hundred trucks and would require significant infrastructure to be built up to be used.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I'm also curious about the road that we have and kind of what our access agreement provides for with regard to maintenance of that road, given the heavy truck traffic from Wholesome.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're talking about the part of the road that the water department that we use?
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe we're at a period where we have to renew that use permit, and we are in discussions with Leo now, not in discussions. We are going to improve that road, both for our safety and the safety of our drivers and just the general, I'm allowed to say it's in not great shape, right, as you get onto Highway 50. So my desire is to, and I think Leo's as well, is that we straighten that curve out a little bit, and then also we're fixing the pavement from where the we changed the curve all the way down to Highway 50.
Okay, thank you.
And I think in there, there's something about us, maintaining that road in the future.
Great,
So.
I'm glad to hear that. My last question for you, sir, has to do with the concerns that our residents on Tunnel Drive continue to raise with kind of these very, very disturbing trucks. And they noted that many of them are pretty quiet and don't really disturb their quality of life, but that there are, some of these bad apples that they routinely can hear or feel screeching by. What would be the best way for them to let you know about presumably these third-party contractors
Yeah.
that are
So,
kind of disrupting their quality of life?
Yep, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please.
We're gonna set up a phone number that these residents can call that would go to the proper people, myself, the plant manager, where we can take care of this. We can, they'll be able to, if we're fortunate enough that they can tell us what the truck is and the truck number, right? The more information they provide, the better we are able to handle the problem. My belief is it's like the 80-20 rule. 20% of the trucks are causing 80% of the problems, right? And it's probably even more like 10-90. So we want to take care of those 10% that are a nuisance. And as Chief Schick said, we're going to do that kind of through a disciplinary action with the drivers. As far as first time you get a warning, second time you don't get to haul for the day. Third time, you're out for a period of time, and then fourth time, you don't haul for Wholesome ever again. So we're serious about having haulers that work for us, that follow our rules, and the rules of our community. So,
Thank you, that's really, really great to hear.
yeah.
What's the timeline, do you think, for getting that number up and running?
I was talking to somebody today, and it shouldn't take, I'm gonna say a week or two. I really don't.
Okay.
I don't know, but it shouldn't take too terribly long.
Awesome.
So, and then we'll whatever's the easiest way to get that number distributed to the residents, either through the council members or, you know, putting something out in the newspaper or something like that, so.
Sure. I'm sure they'd appreciate getting something mailed to their houses for those that live along Tunnel Drive, and then newspaper and us. I know
Yeah.
we would all love
And
to hear about
I
it
think
as
we
well.
also have some complaints along, is it Riverview?
Riverside.
Riverside, yeah.
So I know
Southside.
that sound does carry over to there as well. So we're
Absolutely.
cognizant of that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Kathy?
Just a quick question. I don't know if it's perception or reality, but it seems as if since Wholesome took over, there has been a significant increase in traffic. How many trucks per day have you seen an increase in?
So there has been an increase, because we, own ready-mix businesses out over in Pueblo and Colorado Springs. Those businesses used to buy rock from Martin Marietta up Highway 50. We have been able to internalize the sales of that rock, and it's about probably about a 25–30% increase in volume, which then is about a 25–30% increase in truck volume as well.
Okay.
So your perception is correct.
As I remember, and I don't remember the exact time that trucks are not allowed to be up to start, are you finding them coming up and getting in line or something earlier than when you open, which has created noise issues?
So I don't live down here, and I haven't heard of any issues, but if there were issues, I'd love to hear about it, and we will address
That'd be
that
one of
as
the
well.
phone calls and so forth?
I think so,
Thank you.
yeah. Or even, if they're we've had issues in other parts of the state where trucks show up, they're supposed to show up at 6, they show up at 5:45, 5:30, start blocking the road, right? And if we have those issues, and I could see that potentially happening, we would want to address that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Andrea?
We do have as I said, we do have a limit to how many trucks we can have a day, and I don't remember what that number is, but we don't exceed that number. So we do have a kind of a use permit or access requirement with the state of Colorado.
Okay.
Okay, my question was similar to Kathy's, and the people who live along Tunnel Drive, their sense is that it's increased quite a bit, the traffic. And I just wondered, what, as a business, what your projections are, say over the next 3 or 4 years. Are you looking to create, to expand to the max, or is it gonna stay steady?
We're at about the max of what the plant can do today.
Okay.
So until we upgrade the plant, we're looking at upgrading the plant as well, which will be a couple of years, 2-3 years. We won't see an increase in truck traffic.
But but at that point, you can increase the traffic.
Potentially, yeah. We're kind of at the maximum. Not really. We could go a little bit more, but we're not much more. There's not much more that we need to produce. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I mean, does that make sense? Like, there's not that much more demand, I think, is what
Right.
I'm trying to say.
Okay, and so then, along with that, the blasting, do you have certain times of the day that you do that?
Yeah, so it takes a certain amount of time to load the blast holes, and typically it's middle of the afternoon, like 1-2 o'clock or
Okay.
so.
You're not going to expand that operation, the blasting? Is that just gonna kind of stay the way it is?
Yeah, I think that'll stay the way it is, and realize too that we have, obviously there's government regulations, federal regulations on how much vibration and air pressure and things like that we, how much noise we can create through a blast. So there's federal government regulations, and then Wholesome has its own standards, and those are typically half of what the federal government is.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess I just don't understand, and I drove a lot of truck. My dad had a trucking company. How it is illegal to have a legal vehicle with a legal brake mechanism, and all his did, and I use the Jake brake a lot. It's necessary. How we can make that illegal? I mean, I understand noise. I understand all that. I live in Lincoln Park, but how can you arrest or find something offensive when a vehicle is running and it's legal? It's a muffled system.
Right.
I know wholesome trucks are quiet, or quieter.
Yeah.
They don't have to be that loud. But suppose I necessarily had to use that. I'm pretty sure in here it talks about for safety purposes you can use it, right? So I'm at a concern that the brake that is designed by on the truck is important and necessary. And then the second thing I have is, what kind of burden does that put on our officers who have other things to do to stop them?
Well, Mr. Mayor, that's a fair question and concern. We're absolutely going to do our level best to target those offenders that are significant. And of course, anytime they're used in circumstances where extenuating circumstances are present, we're gonna use good discretion. So in terms of the effect on staffing, I'll be quite honest with you, and I think I illustrated this in my response to council questions earlier today. We will respond to these situations as staffing and calls permit. So they won't be priority one. They may be priority 3 or 4, depending on the tempo of the day.
Okay. A concern is that if it is a muffled and it is a Jake brake, it's legal. There are lots of them that aren't. And I'd like it absolutely quiet too, but the fact of life is that a truck makes noise. It's a big motor, and they are a necessary part of that equipment. They can be properly muffled, and I know the wholesome trucks are quiet. I think you do that on purpose. So probably the ones that don't have a muffle or correct type of mechanism on it are the ones that you'd be looking for.
Well, as John indicated, that 80-20, 90-10, hopefully just through the ordinance and education about the ordinance and recognition by that community that we're pretty serious about this, and we're trying to push forward in a responsible manner, that we're going to take care of that 10 or 20%.
Okay. Thank you. Any other?
Can I just jump in here as well?
Go right ahead, Tim.
Mr. Mayor. The one thing I'm also worried about is our other streets, 9th, 1st, McKenzie, or not so much McKenzie, but Ash. I'm worried that if, as we pass this first one, it'll make it real easy to pass the rest. And I think that becomes a safety issue as well. And I think that is something as a council we have to be very aware of, that there might be a little noise by a few that don't have their Jake brakes appropriately put on, but that's something that can be worked on with our police, the state patrol. But I don't want to see this expand very much because it does become a safety issue.
Thank you, Tim. All right. Having read all that and seen it, do someone want to make a stab at a motion, or what would you like to do from here?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 5, series of 2024, an ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending section 10.04.165 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning vehicle noise.
Second. And with the changing the word identify to identifying.
Pardon?
There is one typographical clarification where the word identify should be identifying in the second to last line.
I'm going to add what he said to my motion. Thank you.
Second. Motion's been made and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Nay.
Maloney?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. So let's move on to C, which is, thank you, gentlemen. C, the second reading and adoption by title only of Ordinance 6, Series 2024, entitled, an ordinance calling for special municipal election and referring a ballot issue to the registered voters, electors of the city of Canyon City, providing for temporary 0.3% sales and use tax to be levied for the purpose of pledging the revenue for the city, Canyon City Area Metropolitan Recreation and Park District for debt incurred to construct a community recreation pool and related capital improvements. I would invite staff to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, members of council, this is a second reading. This is a 0.3% sales tax increase for 25 years for the capital construction of a community pool. The funds would be transferred through to the recreation districts with an IGA that we will bring to council at a later date. And staff would recommend approval on second reading. And I believe our city attorney may have some comments as well.
The only thing I would add is if council does approve this on second reading tonight, as of tonight, the Fair Campaign Practices Act attaches to this question. And what that means is that the city cannot expend money for or against the ballot issue. You can certainly provide factual information. If the city so chooses, it can adopt a resolution for or against. But beyond that, you are free to do things on your own time. And you can identify yourself as council members, but the city cannot spend money urging a vote one way or the other.
Clear? Okay. Look, they're shaking their heads, so. Any other comments? If not, I'd ask for a motion. Tim, are you okay?
Yep.
Okay. I can only see you from the eyes up.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just didn't know whether you fell out of your chair or something. I got to watch this.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, we'll try and make this short. I then ask then for a motion and a second. Would someone like to make that motion? Emily?
Yes, thanks. I move for approval of ordinance number 6, series 2024 on second reading.
Second.
Thank you, Kathy. Any discussion on that motion and second? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
Aye.
Well, thank you very much. This has got a lengthy, wonderful, quiet. We have a wave in the audience. Thank you for that, as that's called encouragement. Okay. Oh, but you know, if you're going to wave, you have to have registered a wave. You know what I mean? Okay. Thank you. This is going downhill in a hurry. Okay. Next regular city council meeting is September 16th, 2024, and we're adjourned. Thank you.